Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the show. I'm Andy Knode, and 25 years ago today, Heart of Ice premiered for Batman the Animated Series, September 7th, 1992. Now, this episode is one that is talked about a lot among the fans of Batman. It is considered one of the better episodes that has ever been made. It was made much later in the production order. It was probably the 14th, or I think it was exactly the 14th. But it was the third episode to air, and it actually won an Emmy for best writing in a animated series. So it's got a lot to say.
If you're going to go sneaking around a crowded office building, you'll need this.
Knockout gas?
Chicken soup. The only way to fight a cold.
I think one of the most notable things about this episode is I think this is where Batman the Animated Series really came into its own. This is the first episode that Paul Dini wrote and Bruce Timm directed, and the combination of these two guys recreated the backstory of Mr. Freeze that had since been adapted into the movies and into the comics. Victor Freeze's wife, Nora, frozen until he can cure her, his body cryogenically frozen and in need of cold. So the quick 30-second rundown of this episode is there is a mysterious man using a freeze ray to pull off all these heists. Batman comes in to solve the mystery that all of these items that are being stolen during this heist is in order to create this large freeze ray as a payback to his wife being him losing his wife because he's working for Gothcore, and in the process of trying to find a cure for his wife, CEO Ferris Boiler comes in, shuts down the experiment, and in result makes him into the freeze person that he is. Batman determines there's only one last item that he needs to get, and he shows up where he's at and is able to capture him and put him in prison. Kind of a fun aspect of this episode is the CEO Ferris Boyle is played by Mark Hamill.
I don't know what this person has against GothCorp, but we've always looked upon ourselves as the people company.
When he came in for the recording session, he was really excited about Batman. He's really into comic books, and he was asking Bruce Timm and the producers if there was any other villains. He really wanted to play a villain. And at that point, all the villains were cast. In fact, he specifically mentioned the Joker. He wanted to play the Joker. They explained that was already cast. Tim Curry was cast in the role of the Joker. And he said, well, if anything comes available, to let him know. A couple weeks later, months later, Tim Curry ended up not working as the Joker. They remembered their conversation with Mark Hamill and called him up. And of course, Mark Hamill is iconically known as the Joker and has been playing him for the last 25 years.
Your unauthorized experiment, I ordered funding suspended weeks ago.
And what's kind of interesting about that is in this episode, there's at least two references that I noticed to Empire Strikes Back. Star Wars, which also was Mark Hamill. One is after Freeze leaves one of his henchmen behind because he's gotten in the way of the freeze ray and is frozen. Batman takes him back to the Batcave to save his life, and he puts him in this floating water tank, which very much feels like the tank that Luke was in Empire Strikes Back. And then likewise, once Batman is frozen and captured, he's hung upside down just like Luke was in the cave in Empire Strikes Back. So I think that's kind of interesting that those worlds collided with the first episode that Mark Hamill appeared in.
Very good. A detective to the last.
Again, I keep mentioning this, but one of the things that really comes out very clearly in this episode is just how striking the animation is. The level of detail that they go to for these elements of this show. Again, in the commentary, Bruce Timm talks about that for the helmet of Mr. Freeze, it was just meant to be a white line, a white halo over his head. But the animation studio took it upon themselves to airbrush every cell of his animation to create that kind of fog, frosted look to the glass, which again is just a great level of detail that just looks so cool in these episodes, and just a level of detail that didn't have to happen, but it did.
That's Mr. Freeze to you.
Also, another moment where the light is flashing and it reflects on Batman's face in the Batcave just looks so neat, and a level of animation that wasn't necessary, wasn't a must, but just added to the level of detail that I appreciate so much more watching it.
Don't leave me, please! Please, come back!
Mr. Freeze was one of my favorite villains, and I really like the design that they gave him in the show. I think so far we've seen Catwoman, and Catwoman was very much designed after Batman Returns Catwoman. It was pretty plain, pretty basic, and of course Man-Bat is a giant bat. But Mr. Freeze, I felt like, was the first time that they really kind of took the leverage to create this look. And it's got this very, again, a classic look to him, that Colossus kind of look from Superman.
Surrounded by winter, forever young, forever beautiful. Rest well, my love. The monster who took you from me will soon learn that revenge is a dish best served cold.
And his voice, played by Michael Ansara, was so perfect for Mr. Freeze. Just everything about the character was really well executed in this. And also, great camera work here with the depth of field from the gun to his helmet was just a lot of fun. So those elements is what really makes this episode stand out apart from the rest. For a lot of those reasons and many more, this episode is the top of my list so far in the list of my favorite episodes. I promise you this won't be a recurring theme that the newest episode just falls to the top of the list. But I have to give this one the respect that it deserves, because a lot of people consider this episode to be one of the best of all times. I know of a couple in my head that's coming up that I would put above this. But as of now, this is at the top of the list for the best episodes of Batman the Animated Series.
I failed you. I wish there were another way for me to say it. But I cannot. I can only beg your forgiveness and pray you hear me somehow. Someplace where a warm hand waits for mine.
So once again, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please leave me a like and give me some comments. Let me know what you think of this episode. And if you agree with me that it should be the top of the list so far of the best episodes of the first 3 that we've seen of Batman the Animated Series. So thanks again. We'll see you tomorrow when we watch the 2-parter of Feet of Clay with the Clayface. Thanks for watching. We'll see you then.